Intro. So Rebel Ridge is the latest movie to be released on Netflix, and it's safe to say that the story following former Marine Terry Richmond felt like it could have been taken out of a Lee Child novel, which focuses on the stories of Jack Reacher at the core of this movie. And action at every turn. This gripping, exciting, and enjoyable 2-hour and 15-minute ride took us on a journey where in the void of no Jack Reacher, it filled the gap with an ending that wasn't necessarily the most conclusive and a sequel looking like it could well be created. Let's jump into the video and break down all that there was to take away from the movie. Here is our view of Rebel Ridge and the ending explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers from the movie. The Rebel Ridge ending explained. By the time the ending of this movie had come around, we had Summer that had been taken by the police force, and Terry was going after the Minotaur to rescue her with the intention of exposing the police for the corruption that was ingrained within Shelby Springs. Chief Sandy Byrne was essentially running an operation where he was seizing cash apparently legally, and because the money was being pushed back into town with regards to keeping the police force maintain the bettering of the town. And also manning that taxes weren't a shy. It meant that he could continue to run the police force independently, putting him in control of the law in the town, rather than having it taken over and run by a higher power, something that he was fearful of. This is why corruption was key, and people that were being arrested on misdemeanors were getting exploited. We saw that many officers on the force were on side with him, and they were forceful when it came to their arrests. This is why there are cases that some are found which had extremely high bails, such as Terry's cousin Mike, and them all being kept for 90 days in jail, was present after 90 days the body cam footage would be deleted, which meant that any issues that could potentially come their way from the perspective of the defendant wouldn't have any evidence to back up in court, so the force could just get away with it. However, there were SD cards that contained the footage, and with Aaron going to the police department, we saw that he had the cards and was planning on releasing them, which would expose the cops in the town for who they truly were. But when he got outside, Jessica turned on him something, which did surprise me, because I thought she was going to be on his side. This led to the SD cards with the body cam footage, which included his cousin Meek's arrest being destroyed with no leverage. It was looking like Terry was going to be killed on the spot, but Officer Evan changed sides and stuck up for Terry, because he had morals, and with that came a shootout where Evan was shot by the chief. During the shootout, it was mentioned that the dash cam recorded 3 minutes prior to the lights being switched on, meaning that the entire encounter would have all been called, and also the shooting of Evan by the chief would have been captured as well. So after Terry took out many of the officers, she switched on the lights, which activated the camera, and then drove off with Evan in the car. And also Summer in the back, both recovering from their injuries. Terry was headed towards the hospital whilst the police were on his tail, and event hot the chief had the upper hand, because Terry's tire had been shot out in a twist. Jessica could pull through, and she rammed her car into the chief's and held him accountable for all that he done, ultimately placing him under arrest from there. We then saw 2 other patrol vehicles change sides, and they were no longer looking to take Terry down, but instead provided him with an escort to the hospital so both Summer and Dean could get treatment that they needed. The final thing that we saw in the movie was Terry ripping out the DVR machine, where the video footage of everything that transpired that afternoon was recorded, and so it wouldn't be deleted. He was holding onto it so tightly. Then quite literally, the movie came to an abrupt ending. There was no sense of resolution or understanding of what happened after he was sitting in the waiting area in the hospital. They like to think that the town's corruption was eradicated, and that the chief and officer Stan were arrested along with many others. In the core of this movie, there were the mess of police brutality being tackled along with the underpinning racism within the police force. Whether that be Jessica being treated differently to the others, so on the force, the body cam footage being hidden so that it was never released, and event the civilians with what they say do when Jessica was placing Terry into the car. I feel like this movie could definitely make a sequel, and to be honest with the way that it tended, I'd quite like to see how they tackle this con movie. My review. Rebel Ridge review of the film. Honestly, this movie literally just reminded me of Season 1 of Reacher on Amazon Prime Video, a town that was being run by corrupt cops, and there being an individual that was on the side of the person that was rivaling them. Terry and Summer were literally Reacher and Roscoe in this instance, but without the romantic connection, and there's nothing wrong with that, because in the context of this movie, I feel it truly worked. We haven't had this season or even an episode of Rearing quite a while, so this show definitely filled the void, and I feel like it gave me that fix that I usually get when I watch the show, despite the fact that it felt similar to Reacher. I feel like it forged its own identity, and I could quite easily see Netflix making more of this movies considering there's no source material for the writers to base Terry Richmond. I thought they did a good job in coming up with the story, and I feel like it was engaging. The world felt fleshed out, and I didn't know where it was going to go from time to times. So I was on the edge of my seat with movies like this. The action sequences are what pretty much define the man, and I don't feel like they disappointed with what they provided. They really lean into the close-up shots for the fight scenes, and it felt so immersive whilst watching it. Especially the final showdown, with smoke being everywhere, and Terry having to navigate through it. I like the fact that we didn't know how lethal Terry actually was at the start, and then when it was revealed that they had their use for him stateside, we always knew that he was going to have some tricks up his sleeves, so when that took off. I feel like it was when the movie truly began to lean into the genre and come into its own. Aaron Pierre delivered a really strong performance as Terry, and you were on his side the entire time. He didn't have much emotion behind him, kind of key reacher, but I feel like that was all deliberate. The mystery, aura, and total domination and confidence that he had over everybody that he faced was impressive to watch, and it made for some great viewing. There's something about the protagonist when they're extremely calm, because they know they can handle what's in front of them. It just makes it all the more satisfying to watch. In terms of the ending, I do feel like it ended rather abruptly, which I thought was an interesting take. We didn't get a sense of resolution, and at first I was a bit disappointed with that. But the longer that I thought about it, I came to realize that that approach was way more powerful. We didn't leave the movie at a point where there was a happy ending. I don't think that would have been tonally appropriate. Corruption had been at the core of this town for several years, due to the chief, and with Terry having the video footage and certain cops switching sides, we just had to hope that it was going to mark an end to what was being done, and that the town would start to improve. Did Summer get custody of her child, the very thing that she was fighting for? Did Evan Marin end up surviving his injuries, and where did Terry Richmond gone? Next questions that I was left with, but I'm glad because it's extremely thought-provoking. I guess if there is a sequel, we might find out. I would actually really like to see a sequel to this movie because I think there's a lot that they could do with it, and I also feel like they could kickstart an entire Fire franchise centered around Terry. I don't think I'm alone when I say this, at least I hope I'm not, but a lot of the stuff that's been released on Netflix in recent times has kind of been a bit lackluster, and there's not much effort that's been put into it. Whereas this, we had a solid story, convincing performances. So it was glossy and nice on the eye, and there was a clear establishing of a world that they wanted to transport, use into. So it's one of the better things that Netflix has put out in quite a while. This is a great Friday night movie, and at the time of me recording this, it's a Fridays. So if you're watching this video now, when it's a Friday, then finish up and stick the movie on. I don't think you'll regret, and do the same if it's any other day of the week. Okay, I'm now in the mood to go and rewatch Reacher. See you in a bit. Other, you have it. Rebel outro. Ridge ending explained. If you want to see more videos on your favorite shows broken down, then click on the card in the top corner. There's an entire playlist there. Or alternatively, you can head over to my channel, where you'll find them all. If you like this movie, then you'll probably love Reacher. I've broken down the entirety of season 2 of that show, so be sure to check it out as well if you'd like to see what I gave this movie out of time. What did you think of this movie? And also, who do you think would win if Reacher and Terry were to face off against one another? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video, and I'll see you in the next one.